All right, here we go. Episode 14 of Dan Mathews and the Animals. He is the animal. I, of course, am the Dan Mathews part of this show. Another week of college football in the books. And Matt, some good, some not so great this week, but that's just the way that things go sometimes. But we did 5 games last week, and we did have at least a little bit of winning action for the people, but also, too, some of the games just gambling being gambling, right?
Yeah, that's the way it goes. Sometimes you just gotta. Sometimes you want to go right, but sometimes things go left. So.
Yeah, that is indeed the way it goes sometimes. Let's start with one of the wins we had. It was the over in the Texas OU game. Of course, a late touchdown by OU helping that out. Although, had they kicked a field goal at that point and it had gone to overtime, the over would have hit no matter what. We would have just liked, in that case, for Texas to have won because it would have been a double cover for this one. We had taken the Horns, giving the 5 points, which, of course, they lose by 4, so they don't get that. 34-30 is the final. But, of course, with the over being at 60.5, the 64 total points, that part covers.
Yeah. I mean, 34-30 score. Oklahoma beat Texas. I like the Longhorns here. From the box score, they proved me right, but from the final score, they proved me wrong. To me, they were just as good as Oklahoma here. On third down, converting 5-14. Same thing Oklahoma was. They're 5-14. They're 3 of 4 on fourth down compared to Oklahoma being 0 for 1. Texas had more yards in the game, totaling 527 yards compared to Oklahoma's 488. Ewers had more passing yards than Dillon Gabriel, 9.8 yards per pass compared to 7.5 from Oklahoma. Longhorns did have less rushing yards, but also on less attempts. Half a yard difference in the yards per rush metric. The difference in this game, as I pointed out multiple times, it lied in the turnovers. Ewers started off the game with 2 interceptions back to back. They really put him behind. First 2 possessions, turnovers, bad starts. They had to play from behind the whole game. Not those 2 interceptions not only give your opponents chances to score, but take away chance for you to score. So it's a double whammy. So yeah, that was the big dramatic shift. Now you have to play from behind the whole game, which limits your strategy and play calling. Then on top of that, add in a fumble. It's no wonder they lost. I mean, it's a shame that Quinn Ewers went into Alabama, Tuscaloosa, and they put on a great display of football where they beat Crimson convincingly. But then they came in this game against Oklahoma at home, and then first 2 possessions, you just blow it. So, unfortunately, we did not, cash our ticket on this one. We took the L. But, I mean, you got to take the punches and roll with them.
That's it for sure, as Texas now pretty much no margin of error if indeed they want to try to find their way back into the college football playoff. Although a lot of the projections I'm seeing out there, Matt, still have Texas as a team that can win. I guess that is probably a lot of the projections out there thinking these 2 teams meet back up in Metro Dallas, this time playing in Arlington at Jerry World for the Big 12 championship, which I'm sure everybody in the Big 12 would love because, of course, they are leaving and going to the SEC next year. But in that case right there, I'm sure they're banking on that Texas would do like what OU did to them a few years ago in a revenge game there in the Big 12 championship. So we'll have to see if indeed that does happen. Let's move on to A&M and Alabama. I mean, look, this one right here, it was a pick'em when it was taken, but I had taken A&M at +1.5. I just felt like this was a good situation with the offensive line situation at Bama, but also, too, A&M had been able to cause havoc in the backfield for their opponents. But credit to Nick Saban's team. They came out and they were able to come out with the win. Although there was me who was very upset with A&M not going for it on that 4th down, instead settling for the field goal. They lose this one by 6. 26-20 was the final in College Station.
Yeah, A&M ended up losing this one to Saban. Alabama on the road got the win. I mean, it was a pretty even fight. Look at the box score. Both teams had the same amount of first downs. They had the same conversion rate on 3rd down and 4th down. Alabama beat them in total yardage by about 30, 40 yards, give or take. Both defenses, they're able to get to the quarterback. Alabama recorded 5 sacks, but A&M recorded 6 sacks. Crimson Tide's run game, it was non-existent. I mean, they had 26 attempts for 23 yards, more attempts than they had yards, and they still ended up winning. It's kind of crazy. A&M, they averaged, it wasn't that great, but they averaged 2 yards a carry, ran for 67 yards. Milroe, however, passed all over his team for 321 yards. And, he took it to them. Both teams had the same amount of yards per pass. A&M had less penalties, actually, by far. And A&M actually beat Saban in a time possession battle by a minute, minute 45. So, yeah, I mean, if I looked at box score without knowing the final score, I would have thought A&M won this game. I really would have. That's just not the case. So Saban did what he does best. He came in, he won this game, despite, losing the box score, in my opinion, by a slight margin. What was big for them was the safety. That was big because at the time being, it was still a one-score game with Alabama in the lead, but that safety turned it into a two-score game. And then Alabama gets the ball back, and they're able to waste 2 minutes off the clock, burn it. So, yeah, that was really big. It killed a couple minutes off the clock. What was also big was that missed field goal by A&M. I mean, that puts them back in a one-score game despite the safety. So, a couple things here and there, but I had A&M. I had to bite the bullet. Alabama, sure, I think they've looked weaker than usual, but they're still able to, Saban finds a way,
Yeah, he does. And especially, too, in games like this where their season is very much on the line. And now Alabama, with the win, is in the driver's seat in the SEC West as they've beaten Ole Miss. Ole Miss beat LSU. So we'll have to see what happens the rest of the way. But a good win for Jalen Milroe and company on the road, no doubt about it. In the Kentucky-Georgia game, we took first half action on this one. We went with Kentucky plus 7.5 in the first half. But look, I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is, this is a Georgia team that for the most part early on in the season, you can't count on to cover a huge number. Boy, did they cover a huge number in this one this week by crushing Kentucky. So much to the point that you've got even Mark Stoops talking about Georgia buying players to a certain point. But the Dogs able to get a huge win in this one as they finish off Kentucky to the tune of 51 to 13 was the final in that one. And the first half number, they crushed the minus 7.5 as they led at the half 34-7.
Yeah, Georgia came out in this game and they were angry, man. Right from the gate, they scored 3 touchdowns unanswered, took a 21-0 lead. I mean, they must have heard the talks from people saying this team's looking shaky and weak. And I think they answered each one of them. And, they're saying, well, look, we're still the, effing Bulldogs. Like, we're still the Bulldogs you remember. Don't get it twisted, right? I mean, I was one of those people that said this team looked weak, and I may be right long term, but I wasn't right this week. So we'll see going forward. Georgia is still Georgia. But again, it's hard to repeat again and again, and they still have problems covering the spread, which means they have not been as good as the market has suggested. And I thought that would happen this week, but it didn't. And we'll see going forward. A team that doesn't cover consistently. I mean, they covered this week, but consistently, you gotta be aware of them because it seems like they're not as good as people believe. And I'm one of those people. I still believe it. But one of those weeks where, again, it's like you gotta bite the bullet sometimes. And this was one of those weeks.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a Georgia team too that probably about this time of year is when they really start to turn it on. About mid-October into November and December is when you start seeing these huge numbers. So maybe that was just kind of, for them offensively, they could look at it and say, this is what we're capable of. This is what we can do. And all of a sudden now, I mean, after a shaky start to the season, Carson Beck, I think, is a guy that if he continues these, performances like this, we're going to start hearing about Carson Beck for the Heisman possibly.
You never know. I mean, he could. You have a couple guys falling off now with some losses. Jaden Daniels was obviously a big pick at the beginning of the season. We see LSU now. They've had trouble. So, and, we'll see because Michael Penix is still strong. We still have the kid out of USC, Caleb. So we have some strong suitors still there. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, Caleb Williams, of course, SC, the defense, kind of like you talked about Jaden Daniels there. I mean, it's the same deal there is LSU does not win this game this past weekend without his performance. And also, too, I mean, other performances they've had this season where he has been counted on. I guess for Michael Penix, this weekend is going to be a huge test for him, as I'm sure we will talk about that next game in the coming up episode 15 on Thursday. Let's move over to Notre Dame-Louisville, as Notre Dame, it's not going to get any easier this week, but last week they had to go on the road to Kentucky and then play against this Louisville Cardinals team. First year of Jeff Brom, and the first year is producing a lot of great results for the Cardinals as they win this one pretty handedly, as Notre Dame gets a late touchdown, but Notre Dame was a 5.5-point favorite in this one. You like the Irish in this one as they go down to Kentucky and lose this one 33-20. Like I said, getting that late touchdown in order to make the score look at least a little bit more respectable.
So yeah, before this game started off, I believe Notre Dame was 40-1 to win the championship, to win the championship. And I think they just blew it this week. When we look at the box score, the first downs were even at 17 apiece. But when we look at the third down conversion rate, Louisville was better. But what really stung this Notre Dame team, I mean, it was going 0 for 2 on fourth down. Louisville had 30 more total yards, which is not that much than Notre Dame, but they dominated them on the run game. I mean, on the ground, 40 attempts for 185 yards compared to Notre Dame's 44 rushing attempts for 1.6 a carry. I mean, not only that, but Notre Dame, they shot themselves in the foot with turnovers. They finished the game with 5 turnovers, and that's extremely uncharacteristic of this Notre Dame team. Coming into this game, they were one of the best in the nation at not giving the ball away in giveaways. So 2 fumbles, 3 interceptions, it'll do you in. And anytime you lose a turnover battle 5-1, and then on top of that, you have 2 turnover on downs, you're not going to win the game. If you told me what the turnover stats would have been before the game, I would have told you that they would have lost by more than 13. So, yeah, Notre Dame shot themselves in the foot. They didn't give themselves any favors. So.
Yeah, as Notre Dame, their second loss of the season. And, oh, by the way, they've got USC this week. That could be a tough, I know that Notre Dame is favored in this one, but SC, the way they played defensively, that could be their first loss of the season, as it's going to be at Notre Dame. And I think the Irish trying very much to keep this season afloat. I mean, New Year's Six is still very much in play. They went out. They will be a New Year's Six team playing in one of the either Fiesta Bowl or Peach Bowl or something like that later on in the season. So this would go a long way if they were able to knock off SC, who had to get out by the skin of their teeth against Arizona last weekend, as defensively a rough week for the Trojans. Let's close it out with this one. LSU on the road at Missouri. It was looking good for Missouri early as they were up by 15, but LSU able to scratch and claw their way back into this. Now, here is where we were still in business here. I mean, we liked Missouri plus the 4 points there, and it was looking good. It was the pick six late. A bad beat in this one is what ends up getting us in that regard. So much to the point, too, Matt Maltepes, that you had Brian Kelly after the game when he was asked about it in the media scrum saying, no, he needs to go down. You know, we work on that situation. The whole point is go down. We take knees. We get out of there. It was not necessarily heated by Major Burns in that moment as he decided, no, I want 6.
Yeah, he flipped the script on him. But, I mean, this Missouri team, they had a shot. They're up, like you said. They're up early, and they really had a shot to beat this LSU team. LSU defense, again, showed a weakness, as they've shown every single damn week. And the only reason, honestly, that this team isn't where everyone thought they were going to be, because Jaden Daniels, again and again and again, he proves week in and week out that he was that type of player worthy of, being in the vote for Heisman. But the problem is, that defense doesn't do him any favors. And no matter how many points he puts up, it seems like he's always battling. He's always got, a chip on his shoulder. His back's against the wall. And I really feel bad for the kid, because this kid, he continues, like I said, carrying this team, whether it's rushing for 100 yards or passing for 300 and passing for touchdowns. He's been a beast. And it really, it sucks to see such a great player not be in talks for the Heisman anymore. But nonetheless, LSU comes into this game and they end up finishing it up and they end up winning. But, the damage is done. You had a chance to go to the championship. You had a chance to go to the playoffs and really do something special with the LSU program. And I think part of it is on Kelly as well.
Yeah, I mean, that Ole Miss loss, defensively hurt them. Second half against Florida State, same deal. as it is kind of a question of what could have been this season at LSU had they even had. I mean, you have a capable defense right now. All right, fine. Maybe you don't win that game against Florida State, but the huge catches and runs and yards after contact and missed tackles, everything they had against Ole Miss, I'm pretty confident in saying they win that one handedly, and they have a really good shot right now at still making the college football playoffs. So
all
it's
they
been
had to do was
frustrating.
be capable. That's all they had to do is just be
That's it.
capable of defense. Just not be
Yep.
abysmal. That's all.
Yep. Yeah, well, shouldn't be too much to ask for, but apparently this year it was. All right, that's episode 14 of Dan Mathews and the Animals. I mean, Matt, I'm sure for sure we're going to talk about that Oregon-Washington game coming up this weekend. I think USC-Notre Dame is going to be another game we talk about. So we'll have some good action for people to preview on Thursday. Are you already working on any in the lab right now?
So I have something in the lab for you guys. Make sure to lock this one in. Liberty over first half 28 and over full game 58. So lock it in. Start cashing tickets. Let's win.
I like it. I like it. I like it a lot. We love winning around here. That is for sure. He's Matt Maltepes. I guess I should point this way. This way. Yeah, there you go. He's Matt Maltepes. I'm Dan Mathews. This is Dan Mathews and the Animals. Hey, inverted camera angles. What can we do? Anyway, get some winners this week. We'll be back at you on Thursday right here. It's Dan Mathews and the Animals.